What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside Hartford, Connecticut. And today's video will be the Week 2 NFL recap video. And if you watched any football, you probably saw an injury. There were a lot more injuries than normal this week. And yeah, some players that suffered injuries, they weren't key players. But rather than do a separate video, I'm just going to mention the key injuries as we discuss the game. So without further ado, we'll jump in. And again, just like last week, Thursday night comes first, so we have all the 1 o'clock games and the 4 o'clocks, and the Sunday night game, then the Monday night game. All times according to Eastern, as Heartland Sports is based in Hartford, Connecticut. So we'll start off with the Cincinnati at Cleveland game, which Cleveland won 35-30. Yes, the Bengals lost, but Joe Burrow had a solid game. Bengals have to be happy and confident going into this next week's matchup for Week 3. Cleveland, on the other hand, they were embarrassed in Week 1. They get a win, their first win. A big divisional win because now you're 1-1 in the division. That's always helpful. And Cleveland needed this win, confidence booster. But it was a good battle between a pair of young first overall picks and quarterbacks with Burrow, obviously 2020, Baker, 2018 first overall pick. Cleveland won the game. No major injuries to report from this one. Then we get the LA Rams at Philadelphia Eagles, and LA just embarrassed Philadelphia. Jared Goff looked amazing for LA. You know, speaking of first overall pick quarterbacks, 2016 first overall pick right there, looked very good, and, he was clicking. They just embarrassed the Eagles defense. So, on the bright side, no injuries for either team. I mean, Cam Akers for the Rams did suffer a rib injury. Loose cartilage in the rib. So that's going to be something to monitor. They're saying he might be ready for Week 3. And then, of course, Malcolm Brown also suffered a finger injury, but again, he's also expected to be ready for Week 3. New York Giants versus Chicago Bears. And this one, the Bears win. They squeak out the victory. Trubisky looked decent, but not great, for those of you wondering how Trubisky's been doing. The Giants, on the flip side, almost had a good comeback, but they fell just short. Unfortunately for the Giants, they did suffer 2 injuries. The minor one is Sterling Shepard, the wide receiver. He suffered a turf toe injury. Nobody truly knows how long turf toe injury is going to take for him to heal. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's the 5 months. It's up to each person. And of course, the big injury for the Giants was Saquon Barkley. One of the league's best running backs, torn ACL, done for the season. Huge loss for the Giants. That's demoralizing as well. This was a year where Giants fans were finally getting excited. The defense is still behind, but they held the Bears to 17. That's pretty good. Bears, though, no injuries to report, no major injuries to report. So Bears are at least looking good. Atlanta versus Dallas. I don't want to discuss this game that much. Atlanta choked yet again, and they lose by 1 point, 39-40. Dallas gets this onside kick in the fourth quarter, and then they end up winning, and just an ugly game for Atlanta. And unfortunately, Dallas wins. That boosts their confidence big time. Dallas had 3 fumbles in the first quarter. You can't do that and expect to win games, but the Falcons just didn't want to play, it looked like. The Falcons just gave up. Again, talking about hot seats. Man, I don't know how long Atlanta's coach is hanging around anymore. He hasn't been looking good. This is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, and they are not looking that good. Dallas is a good team, but you can't be blowing those leads. If you're forcing turnovers, you got to capitalize on them. On the bright side, for these two teams, no major injuries to report. Now we go to Green Bay to see the Packers host the Detroit Lions. And this game was a bit of a blowout. Aaron Rodgers has something to prove this year, and he's going out there. He's proven himself. Aaron Jones has been looking good as well for them. There were lots of talks about regression, especially since they drafted a running back early on in the draft. Not truly coming to fruition yet. And then for the Lions, I mean, Stafford's not dominating like he was at this point last year through a couple games, but he's still doing what he can. So the Packers and the Lions, this was a decent matchup. Packers ran away with the game, though. No major injuries to report in this game, but Devontae Adams was dealing with a hamstring injury for Green Bay. He was apparently ready to return during the game, but they kept him out because of the score. So it's something to monitor but I don't expect him to miss too much time. Then we get Jacksonville at Tennessee, another divisional game, and Tennessee squeaked out a 33-30 victory. And this was a good battle between the two quarterbacks in Tannehill and Gardner Minshew. Tannehill just outplays Minshew, and it was a good game. I didn't get to watch it, but a very close game, always exciting. Two good quarterbacks, neither of whom were really expected to do much. If you came to the Week 1 2019, you told me, oh yeah, Ryan Tannehill and Gardner Minshew are going to be kicking butt and having a quarterback battle next year. I'm going to say, wait, who's Gardner Minshew? And Tannehill, are you sure? But interesting game. No major injuries to announce in this game. Then you got Minnesota at Indianapolis, and Indianapolis won this game hands down. Minnesota just did not look good. Kirk Cousins threw 3 or 4 interceptions, and the offense just couldn't get anything going. For Minnesota, Mike Boone, running back, suffered a concussion. I think they'd prefer him over, obviously, Dalvin Cook getting hurt, but you never want to see an injury, period. On the defensive side of the ball for Minnesota, they did lose linebacker Anthony Barr. He suffered a torn pec. He's done for the year. So that's a big loss for them. That's a leader on your defense. That really stinks. He's a good pass rusher as well. On Indianapolis' side, they did lose wide receiver Paris Campbell. He's been dealing with an MCL injury. He's not expected to return this season. There's a chance he doesn't return this season, but they haven't effectively said, oh, it's a torn MCL. He's done for the year. It's probably a pretty bad sprain. Also, they did lose safety Malik Hooker, a starter for the season. He suffered a torn ACL. So this game wasn't pretty for that. But Indianapolis at least came out with a victory. Now we get Buffalo at Miami. And this game did have the lights go out right around halftime, right after halftime, or during halftime. And the lights going out didn't stop Josh Allen from doing what he does against Miami. Allen just kicked butt. He seems to know the Dolphins playbook or something, because he always has these amazing games against the Dolphins. And the score was closer than you'd want if you're Buffalo, but Miami has definitely improved on where it was last year. So Buffalo needed this win. It really helps them. Miami kind of needed the win as well, but not as much as it's not like it's a demoralizing loss and you're done. But Buffalo wanted this. Miami needs to figure out how to stop Josh Allen from doing what he does. As for the injury front, no major injuries to report, but the Dolphins' Byron Jones did suffer a slight groin injury, and he's expected to return. He might not miss any games, but still something worth noting. Then we get to the bloodbath on the injury front. San Francisco at the New York Jets in MetLife Stadium, and San Francisco wins this game pretty handily, 31-13. But they might have won the battle, but they lost the war. It wasn't pretty. The Jets lost a receiver, nothing major, but the 49ers suffered 5 major injuries. So the running back room, Tevin Coleman, obviously he's the backup. He's out for multiple weeks, according to Coach Shanahan. So it's not great, but it could have been much worse. They just announced it's a knee injury. He's out multiple weeks. Speaking of running backs, Raheem Mostert, he also suffered an injury. This one's expected to be maybe 1 game, maybe 2. But Mostert is expected to return very soon, hopefully by that for them, week 4, maybe 5. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo suffered an ankle injury. He's expected to miss. They keep saying, oh, he might come back, he might be ready. But I'm expecting him to miss at least a game, maybe 2 or 3 because of the nature of the injury. More importantly for the 49ers, though, they're known for their pass rush. And they lost 2 major pieces. Solomon Thomas, defensive tackle, and Nick Bosa, defensive end. Both of them, within minutes of each other, went down with torn ACLs. So both of them are done for the season. It really hurts San Francisco. Obviously, Bosa was their high draft pick in 2019. And he's looked very good. He's really young. And Solomon Thomas has been really playing well in recent years. Those are 2 key injuries for San Francisco. Teams that have a running game, because remember, the Jets really didn't have a running game with Le'Veon Bell out, are really going to have a chance to beat up the 49ers, defensive line. But we'll see what happens. And now we get to Denver at Pittsburgh. And this game was closer than you'd expect. So pretty early on, Broncos quarterback Drew Lock gets hurt, suffers a shoulder injury. He's going to miss. He's going to miss a few weeks. They're saying like 3 to 5 weeks for him. 2 to 4, 3 to 5. That's never good. He did have a thumb injury going into last year that he suffered, so he missed the majority of the season. So Drew Lock just can't seem to catch a break right now. Really tough loss for them. Pittsburgh played pretty well. The offense wasn't doing as well as you'd hope, but the defense was doing decent, at least on the pass rush front. Also for the Broncos, Courtland Sutton, their number one receiver, torn ACL, done for the year. So that really just bites. It goes to show that the lack of preseason is really starting to hurt these guys. We're seeing more injuries than we normally do at this point in time. So now we have Carolina at Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay won 31-17. It shouldn't have been that close. The Buccaneers defense was so good. They forced 4 turnovers against the Panthers. And Christian McCaffrey, speaking of the Panthers, he suffered a ankle injury, high ankle sprain. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. He says he hopes he's back in a couple weeks. Odds are it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks. The Panthers are not going to risk rushing him back. Brady, on the flip side for Tampa Bay, he started off the game red hot. He did kind of cool off as the game went on, but it was a good homecoming for him, returning back to playing his first game at home in Tampa Bay. Washington at Arizona. Arizona pretty handily won this game. Really not too much to talk about other than Kyler Murray, again, was efficient. He wasn't dominant, but he was efficient enough. And really on the injury front, only one injury to report, and that's going to be guard Brandon Sheriff for Washington. He suffered an MCL sprain. He's expected to miss a few weeks. Now we get to Kansas City at LA, and these last 4 games here, 3 of the last 4 were pretty good. So Kansas City and the LA Chargers, they end up going into overtime. And early on in the game, the Chargers were winning. They were winning pretty well. And going into the half, they were still up. But then Kansas City came back. They didn't, we didn't see Mahomes do what Mahomes does and dominate. But, it was pretty impressive to see the Chargers, hold the Chiefs to less than 25 points. And, hold them to 20 points during the regulation. But in the end, the Chargers end up losing, and one has to wonder. So Tyrod Taylor, their starting quarterback, ended up getting ruled out hours before the game, and they didn't announce what it was. They just said, he had to go to the hospital. So, of course, everyone's thinking, oh, no, what happened? And apparently he had some injury that they gave him a shot for, and he didn't react well to the shot. So he's expected to miss a few weeks. They're saying he's week to week, so that could be the season. That could be he's back week 3. So Herbert had to make his first NFL appearance, and it was against Kansas City. That's pretty intimidating. The defending champions. Yeah, you're playing at home, but it wasn't what the Chargers wanted. And this game ends up going into OT, as I'd mentioned before. And Kansas City wins it on a field goal. So pretty impressive victory for Kansas City. Always tough to beat your division rivals. We get to Baltimore-Houston, and Baltimore just crushes Houston. Lamar Jackson didn't dominate the game, but he did the signal calling, and Houston's just really getting bullied. You got to feel bad for them. No injuries to report. Now we get to New England at Seattle, Sunday night football game. I got to catch the end of this game, and this was a game that I was so happy about. Seattle and New England always play each other very good. And this game was no exception. They played a very close, very competitive game. And, in the end, you wind up 1 play left. New England has the ball on Seattle's 1 yard line, 2 yard line, whatever it was. And they try to run it with Cam Newton. They had been getting success with running with Cam Newton. And Seattle stuffs them. So it was a very good game, very close game, very impressive win for Seattle. Seattle wanted this win. On the flip side for injuries, the last real major injury we have here this week. So Bruce Irvin, linebacker for the Seahawks, ended up tearing his ACL. He's done for the year. I started watching right around the time he did that, and I said right away, "Ooh, that's a torn ACL," because you could tell, you could see it. So it was a win for the Seattle, but Irvin's a big name for them. Who knows what's going to happen? On the flip side for Seattle, man, Russell Wilson was cooking. I think he threw the 5 touchdowns to 5 different receivers, which is what you want. You want to spread the wealth. You don't want to hit the same guys over and over again. So pretty impressive win by Seattle. And then we have the last game, Monday Night Football game, New Orleans at Las Vegas. I got to watch the last 3 quarters of this game. Normally I don't get to watch a lot of these games, but so this was a good one. So the Saints had the lead early on, and then the Raiders just started rallying, and you have to wonder if, this team is really in love with Vegas and they're just ready to prove themselves. Vegas wins 34-24, and this was an eye-opener. Nobody really thought the Saints would lose to the Raiders, but they did. Here we are. And the Raiders just looked really good. They had some drives where they were just really dominant, and they were really frustrating the Saints. But the Saints lost this game. The Saints committed so many penalties. There was a drive, I forget if it was the early third or early fourth quarter, where the Saints had like 3 or 4 plays get called back due to penalties. And they were all pretty good games, too. And the Raiders didn't shoot themselves in the foot as much with penalties, but they still committed some penalties. The refs were not just throwing flags at nothing. They were legitimate penalties. So Saints fans, don't cry about this one. You guys are known for being babies. But Vegas, impressive win. So now, here we are, and we're going to pull up the standings now. So, of course, the AFC East, for the first time in a while, Buffalo has sole possession of first place, sitting there at 2-0. New England's right behind them at 1-1. Miami and the Jets are tied at 0-2. NFC East is looking like a dumpster fire this year. Washington and Dallas are tied for first at 1-1. Washington has the edge over Dallas at this point because they are 1-0 in the division. Dallas is 0-0. And then New York and Philadelphia sitting at 0-2. New York has the edge over Philadelphia because Philadelphia's 0-1 division. New York is 0-0. AFC North, Baltimore and Pittsburgh both sitting pretty at 2-0. Cleveland 1-1. Cincinnati 0-2. Cleveland, Cleveland got embarrassed by Baltimore, so Baltimore has the edge over Pittsburgh with a division win. NFC North, Green Bay and Chicago both sitting at 2-0. Minnesota and Detroit both 0-2. Green Bay beat Detroit this week, which gives them the edge over Chicago, and Minnesota the edge over Detroit. I'd be concerned if I'm a Vikings fan right now, and I definitely would be concerned about this team. I don't know how long Zimmer is going to be there for a coach. AFC South, Tennessee sits in sole possession of first place at 2-0. Derrick Henry's doing Derrick Henry things. Jacksonville and Indianapolis are both 1-1. And then Houston sitting last at 0-2. Really tough schedule for Houston, though. You played the Chiefs and the Ravens early on, your first 2 games. No one really expected them to be anything better than 0-2. NFC South, so Tampa Bay and New Orleans sitting at 1-1. New Orleans has the edge over Tampa because they did beat them in the head-to-head matchup. Atlanta and Carolina are both 0-2. Carolina's in last because they did lose a divisional game against Tampa Bay this week. Atlanta's 0-0 in the division. AFC West, Kansas City and Las Vegas, of all teams, sit tied for first at 2-0. Kansas City has looked a bit better than Las Vegas. Plus, they do have a division win. Vegas has played their first 2 games against NFC opponents, I'm pretty sure. So that does not help them in any tiebreaker situations. Chargers sit in third at 1-1. Close game against the Chiefs, but that doesn't help you. The NFL doesn't care if you lose a game by 1 point or 50 points. It's just the same thing. A loss is a loss. And then Denver sits in last place, 0-2. Denver is going to be in some problems. Top receiver, Courtland Sutton, as I mentioned, done for the season. Drew Lock going to miss some time. NFC West, definitely looking like the strongest division in the NFL at this point. Arizona, LA, and Seattle are all sitting pretty at 2-0. And then San Francisco, 1-1. San Francisco, of course, lost to Arizona week 1, which is why Arizona's got the lead here. And then the Rams and Seahawks both looked very good at times, but I would say Seahawks are better than the Rams at this point. But this was our Week 2 NFL recap. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day.